Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to Midweek Live. How are we all doing in chat? I hope you're ready for a bumper stream tonight. Got loads to get through. We're going to be talking about Lando Norris in just a moment, getting some reaction from Jonty and Dan. A couple of bits I want to get off my chest on that one as well. We're also going to be talking about Zak Brown's comments regarding Esteban Ocon and Stoffel Vandoorne, who apparently he would snap up if given the opportunity. There you go. Make what that of you will. What it all means for Toro Rosso's lineup, the driver market as a whole. We're also going to be talking Red Bull. Loads to get through tonight, so I hope you are all ready for this one. I am certainly ready. And of course, in keeping with the promise, there is absolutely no scripting for this apart from a few quotes. So this could go very, very, very well or absolutely terribly. Good evening, Jonty.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Sean. I suppose I'll say hello to you first, shouldn't I?
It would be the polite thing to do, yes. No, it's all right. Are you good? Are you ready for this one? Loads to get through, actually, mate.
Yeah, and I've been trying to catch up with it because I've only been home from work for a couple of hours.
So a busy evening already then. So well, I'll try and keep it covered. Got loads of quotes here to go through. Obviously, Zak Brown has managed to get, I think, both of our backs up a little bit. But we'll talk about that in a minute. And welcome back again. He seems to become a fixture now on these Wednesday streams. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Jonty. Hello, Sean. Hello, chat. I am very happy to be here once again. Yes, it is almost becoming a weekly thing now, but I've definitely got no complaints about that.
No, you're more than welcome, mate. Everyone seems to like you, so that's awesome. It's always nice when somebody likes you, so there you go.
Yeah, that's good.
Going to hop into this one then because it all kind of kicked off on Monday with the driver market. I don't know, but the silly season's been pretty boring so far. And it all got very interesting on Monday when McLaren announced Lando Norris would be replacing Stoffel Vandoorne. I gave my initial reactions to it on Monday in the news video that I did, Jonty, but what was your first thought when you heard that news? I'm very happy for Lando, as I'm sure you are, but do you think that's the right move for McLaren?
I'm not sure about the right move for McLaren. Obviously, very happy for Lando, and he is. If it wasn't now, it was definitely going to be the year after. You know, it was definitely coming, but I'm not sure if he's quite ready yet. His consistency's dropped off massively this year in F2, and I'm quite worried.
What about you, Dan? Your first thoughts when you got that news on Monday?
I mean, my first thoughts, I thought it was a bit of a stab in the dark, for sure. A real unknown quantity, I feel, especially chucking him straight in at the deep end. But, my initial thought straight away was I was really happy for it. And I thought it was the right call. I wasn't too impressed with Stoffel over the past couple of weekends. And, yeah, personally, I thought the right call from McLaren. Yeah, that was a good one.
Good start, Dan. Good start.
Yeah.
I think we all kind of agree we're happy for Norris. I think pretty much everybody will because it's a big opportunity for him. But I tend to agree with what Jonty's saying. I'm not convinced he's ready. I've been following him since his karting days. He's clearly a very quick guy and a real talent of the future. But 18, 19, when he gets to Australia, it just feels like they've kind of... It's a little bit too much for him too soon, perhaps. Obviously Verstappen was younger, but he was brought through the ranks. That was up to Red Bull. That's what they did. But I kind of feel like another year in F2, because I'm not convinced he's going to win the title this year. I don't think another year in F2 would hurt him. Maybe a development driver at McLaren would have been fine, and another year perhaps for Stoffel to maybe prove himself against Carlos Sainz. I don't think that would have been a bad move, but his consistency, you're spot on, Jonty. He won in Bahrain, didn't he, in F2, got pole position as well. He's not won since. That's 19 races without a win. He is picking up the points, but he's nowhere near as consistent as he was towards the start of the season and nowhere near as consistent as he was in Euro F3 last year.
No, exactly. He started off the F2 year so strong. I remember watching Bahrain and thinking, wow, he's just carrying it on from F3, completely untouchable. And then it's just slowly dwindled off. He came back a little bit with the wet drive at Germany, I think it was. But other than that, he's just sort of been hovering around sort of 4th to 7th, maybe the odd 3rd, while Russell has been consistently up at the front. Now, I know he wasn't really in the line for a McLaren seat. He's obviously got ties elsewhere, but the difference between them has been quite staggering.
It has been huge. You obviously follow F2 closely as well, don't you, Dan? Very closely. So, what have you made of him this year? You say you're saying it's quite a good shot, and you agree with McLaren's call, but has his consistency been that good that he's ready for F1? Not a knock at him because, like I said, I've watched him through junior formula and he's bloody quick.
Yeah, I mean, I've been quite impressed with Norris. I think you're both right. At the beginning of the year, he was untouchable, and that seems to have dropped off a little bit. I do question, though, if that's Norris getting worse or the other drivers, especially the likes of Russell, if they're getting more used to the series and they're progressing a little bit more than Norris is. But I will say, I'm 80% confident of this. I probably should have checked before I came on, but I'm 80% confident he's only not scored in 2 races. And this isn't 2 weekends. This is 2 races in the whole of the F2 season. This is Norris, which I think that's incredible. And if you compare that to Russell's amount of times he scored, Norris does beat him in that way. It's just the fact that he's not got these flashy feature race wins, and in qualifying, he's not been as good as Russell. But I think what you said earlier, Sean, I think I'd definitely put my money on Russell winning the title. But I think Norris has impressed me, and I think he'll give Russell a good run for his money come the end of the season.
Tell you what I like about Lando Norris. What you see is what you get. Just here I go bragging. I met him at Autosport in January. He's a genuinely nice lad, and literally what you see, that is him. There's no fuss around him. He's not putting anything on. That is him, and I kind of like that. And I like the fact he's got the raw speed. But when I look at him and Russell, for me, and I don't know if I'm in the minority here or not, for me, Dan, I think Russell's the more complete package at this point, whereas Norris has just got a little bit further to go to develop, and I think he could do with another year in F2.
Yeah, I agree with that. I did see somewhere, I can't remember it. It might have been Autosport themselves. They mentioned that last season, Russell had a season with the Pirelli tyres, whereas Norris, he didn't. This is Norris's first year with the Pirelli tyres, and I think you're right. I think he needs a little bit more time just to get used to his surroundings. And for me, yeah, I agree. Norris isn't quite as polished as Russell, but I think partly that is because of the Pirelli tyres, and maybe, I don't know, a little bit, I don't want to say less inexperienced, but maybe that.
So we're going to move on to Zak Brown now, Jonty, but just quickly, do you think this is the right call from McLaren, or do you think they'd have been better looking for maybe some experience, given, of course, that he's going to get thrown into what is a bit of a pressure cooker at McLaren at the minute with a hell of a lot of infighting at board level, a very disrupted team at the moment?
Yeah, that is a risk, obviously, but I get the feeling that McLaren as a whole are just looking to make a fresh start across the board. You know, they've got 2 young drivers. Sainz has got some experience, but still not a lot. And they just want to build up everyone together at the same time instead of bringing in someone with loads of experience saying, oh, it should be this way, that way, which could clash with what the engineers are saying, what the other driver might be saying. If they're all on the same page, they can at least think about making forward steps. And what you were saying about Norris being a decent guy, I mean, that is quite obvious. I don't know if anyone watched the WTF1 GP that they did. He took the time out to go to that, meet with all the people, and apparently he spent the entire day laughing. So he's certainly going to be a personality that's coming into the pit lane, which is definitely something lacking at the moment.
Yeah, we need that in Formula One. I was going to move on to Brown, but there's something I want to get off my chest before I go any further, because it's been bugging me the last 2 days. I really, really, really want the likes of Sky Sports, who are going to go absolutely, they're going to be in crisis over this, aren't they, as Jeremy Clarkson will put it. But I really, really want them to stop with all this, the next Lewis Hamilton BS. He's not the next Lewis Hamilton. He's Lando Norris. Yes, the comparisons are obvious because he's been in the McLaren program. He's going to McLaren's team with a Spaniard, which Lewis did back in 2007. He's nothing like him. Or am I missing something? I mean, he's aggressive in the overtake, which Hamilton was at a young age and still is today, I guess. But he's nothing like him at that age. And I don't like the British media, Jonty, clearly piling this pressure on, building him up, just waiting for that first mistake so they can rip the rug from underneath him and knock him right down, because that's what the British press do better than anybody.
Yeah, they always do, and it doesn't matter what it's about, whether it's sport, music, TV, whatever. We're constantly seeing the next Lewis Hamilton, the next Johnny Wilkinson, the next Ed Sheeran, on and on and on. And they always do it. And you're right, he's nothing like Hamilton. They have a completely different approach, and they are a completely different personality. So it's just one of those buzzwords that you will always hear.
Yeah, it just really annoys me when they start that, and it puts unnecessary pressure on him. You know, at what 18 years old. I think I've said twice now, but why? It's just not needed. But let's move on to Zak Brown, and probably not going to start ranting at this point, but a little bit of a quote for you. I'm going to read what he said. He said, "I definitely think he's a Formula 1 caliber driver, and if I was Toro Rosso, I'd put Stoffel in a heartbeat. I think we've had a very poor race car for 2 years. Fernando can adapt quicker. He's got much more experience. Stoffel was very close to Fernando. Stoffel is an outstanding race car driver. I think in a different environment, Stoffel may excel more and with a better race car." So I translate that as, perhaps I'm wrong, Jonty, as our car's crap, he'll do better in a better car. How's that Stoffel's fault?
Yeah, I can't deny I was thinking the same thing. I read the quote and thought, hang on, you're saying you didn't give him a good enough car, but you're blaming him and sacking him anyway. I don't know if anyone saw my tweet. It reminded me of the bit in Fast and Furious where he's just blaming Brian for all the problems, even though it's not his fault. It's spineless, I think is the best word for it.
It's massively hypocritical, isn't it, Dan, to come out and say, you know, we're letting him go, but if I had a spare seat, I'd snap him up.
It's so peculiar. I mean, Zak Brown, this isn't the first time you've said something strange, but I read this more as a huge, almost public, I feel very guilty that we've got rid of Stoffel Vandoorne. Someone please take him. I mean, they have sort of just thrown him out at a second's notice, but the fact that he's saying, oh, he's still good enough and we're sorry, someone should have him. I mean, that just seems like he feels sorry for him. But in this cutthroat world of F1, you can't be like that. I'm not Zak Brown's biggest fan, so I don't want to, really throw in any unfair opinions. But yeah, I think it's a very peculiar one for sure.
I just don't, Stoffel, and it's not going to go down well with some people. He hasn't been brilliant this year. He hasn't lived up to what I expected him to do in Formula 1, but that can't be all him. That car is awful, and they're admitting to it there. But to be sort of giving it the whole, if we had a seat spare, we'd put him in it. Well, you didn't, did you? And that's rubbish. And can you imagine, Jonty, they've dropped Vandoorne and they're trying to get him a seat. Can you imagine somebody turning up with a driver and saying, "Hi, got a driver here. He's really good. Would you like to take him?" They're just going to turn around and go, "Well, why is he not in your car if he's so good?"
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if I was Toro Rosso, I'd be saying, all right, what's the catch? No, we all know about the things with James Key. But you do that under the table. You don't come out in public, say stuff like that. It's ridiculous. If there is some kind of clever dealing going on where Vandoorne's going there for James Key, then fair enough. But like I said, don't come out and do it in public.
It's just such a, I guess it's probably just PR trying to make it all rosy and try and get him somewhere, maybe feel guilty for having to drop him. But he did say that they were concerned that Toro Rosso might snap Norris up, which is why they had to sign Vandoorne. But then why bring Carlos Sainz in? I mean, I don't know. It's just such a... I love the word peculiar, Dan. I think that's a brilliant way of putting it. I think that's a really good way of putting it. But where next for Vandoorne, Dan, really? I mean, Toro Rosso probably looks like the most likely at the moment, but these doors and all the drivers linked to Toro Rosso, we'll talk about that in a moment, these doors are all closing very quickly for drivers like Esteban Ocon, let alone Stoffel Vandoorne, who's just been sacked, effectively.
For me, Vandoorne is not a piece in the 2019 puzzle. I don't see him fitting in anywhere. I don't see him at Toro Rosso. I think they have better options and will pick other options. I don't see him at Sauber. I don't see him at Williams. For me, he's out. He's going over to IndyCar with Fernando. He's going to Formula E. I just don't see him in Formula 1. And you're right, there's so much better options for all the other teams. Ocon, the biggest one there. He deserves to be in F1 100% more than Vandoorne. And sorry for Vandoorne fans in the chat, I've just said that. But I think a lot of people would agree with me there. And I think there's a lot of drivers that aren't guaranteed a seat, like Grosjean, that I think definitely deserve a chance over Vandoorne. That being said, if there is a seat for him, I wouldn't be disappointed because the 2 years he's had at McLaren haven't been great. But no, in 2019, I do not see Vandoorne on the grid.
No, I don't think you're alone in that. I would like to think that he's got a shot, but I think there's just so much talent that's just going to go down the drain in Formula 1. But it's interesting you mentioned IndyCar. Last quote from Zak Brown on Vandoorne, said, but we have some other racing activities that you guys know we are reviewing, and I wouldn't hesitate to keep Stoffel in the McLaren family if there was a seat available and he had a desire to race in it. So, Jonty, possibly McLaren Indy with Alonso and Vandoorne.
Yeah, that was suggested by a few people on Twitter, and it certainly seems possible. I do worry that once a driver goes from Formula 1 to Indy permanently, that's it, they're gone forever. Which would be a shame for Vandoorne. But if he did go there as a teammate to Alonso, they could really dominate. Once they've had a year to get things up and running, they could be a real force there.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, isn't it? I mean, just before I move on to Toro Rosso, I feel for Stoffel. I really do. And you know, the fact they've let him go is one thing, but then to come out and say, actually, it was our fault and you are a really good driver and we really like you and we would have signed you, just feels like a bit of a kick in the gut. And I just don't think he's been treated very well here. Has he been brilliant this year? No, he hasn't been brilliant, but he's been better than I think some people think he has been. And he's not been a million miles away from Alonso on race pace. Yes, he's been out qualified, but, you know, Kimi Raikkonen, world champion, was pretty battered by Alonso when they were at Ferrari. So, yeah, I know different car, different circumstances, but I'm concerned with what Dan's saying there about how he might not be on the grid next year. But Toro Rosso is an option. As I've already said, Zak Brown came out basically and said the reason they had to sign Norris up is because they thought Toro Rosso were going to get him. If they didn't, I don't know if he's heard of a contract. They could have tried something with him being a young driver. But Helmut Marko has had his say, of course, on Brendan Hartley, saying there should be a significant improvement by him in his performances at the remaining races. So the pressure is on him. But in terms of their options for 2019, he said there isn't a short list, but rather a long list of drivers. There are 10 names on it, but I can already inform you, brace yourself, Ocon fans, that it is unlikely to be a driver associated with Mercedes. However, anything is possible in F1. 10 names, Dan. I've got Hartley, Vandoorne, Kvyat, Verne, Buemi. I'm still going to stick Ocon in there because he said anything can happen. And some have mentioned Giovinazzi, but he said that's probably not going to happen. 10 names? I can't think of 10.
10? Blind. 10? That's more. Oh my. No, your list is longer than my list. That is ridiculous. No, I'm struggling to quickly think of anyone. I'm trying to F2 drivers. There's no drivers in their young driver program that have enough super license points. 10. They've got to be looking at some real oldies, as in maybe Kubica. Like, I don't know if you said Kubica in your list there. Maybe someone in the chat they just said Grosjean. I mean, that seems very long. 10. I think Helmut Marko loves an exaggeration. That could be an exaggeration.
I mean, could you think of any more, Jonty? I think, what have I got there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7. So who are these other 3? Barrichello?
Well, the point about super license points is valid. However, you've got to think this is what needs to apply for next year. So by the end of this year, there are several other drivers which could then have enough points. So there's a few names which could get added to that. People like Albon.
Yeah. He's ruled him out, though, hasn't he?
Yeah, and also the one I told you in the direct message. There's one ex-Formula 1 driver who is becoming very public and well known as Honda's motorsport sort of ambassador, if you like. Jenson Button.
I love that. I would absolutely love that.
I'm seeing so many things of Honda putting him out doing sort of little videos showing off their performance things in racing or road cars and what have you. They're really using him as sort of a figurehead for their racing division. And it was even tweeted out by Honda F1 Racing themselves. I know it's virtually impossible and he doesn't want to come back, but, you know, the name's there.
What do you make about the Kvyat rumours, or the Kvyat rumours, however you want to say it, Jonty? Because he said, I'll just find his quote, I've got it here somewhere, I would say he is more mature, but we are not in a hurry with Toro Rosso. We will solve our driver problems, we have a big list of names, and we'll see. It seems to be that this Kvyat rumour poked its head out and everyone went, whatever, not going to happen, it's just silly season. But it really is snowballing at the moment. It really is, and it looks like it's going to happen.
Something's going to happen.
I don't know why, but you read everything going on. They say there's no smoke without fire, and all this with Daniel Kvyat just seems to be really building up, and it wouldn't surprise me.
It genuinely would surprise me. Not from the team standpoint, from Kvyat's point. I know, yes, it's a Formula One drive, and every single seat driver wants a Formula One seat above everything else, no matter what. But in Kvyat's case, I wouldn't take it if I was him. I really wouldn't. Not after everything they put him through.
Not even for an F1 race seat, a chance to, as I've said on Twitter this week, come out and redeem it, give a bit of redemption, prove Marco wrong. Even if Marco turns around at the end of the year and does dump on him all over again, if he's performed, he might get picked up by somebody else. It could be a shot to get away from Red Bull completely, if that makes sense. Come in and prove to everyone he can do it, get that redemption, and then go off and get a seat at Haas or somewhere like that. I get what you're saying with the way he was treated at Red Bull.
Yeah, he was the convenient scapegoat so that they could fast track Max. And he knows that. They know that. And I think he would love them to be in a position where they're absolutely desperate. He's the best option, and he can turn around and say, nah, screw you guys, I'm going home.
South Park reference, like it. What about you, Dan? All this with Kvyat, do you think it's going to happen?
Well, Jonty's obviously very passionate about this, I can tell. I do agree with him. I think for Toro Rosso, that's fantastic. But for Kvyat, I think for him, he'd just make himself look like a bit of a muppet again. I don't think they'd treat him particularly well. And today, Toro Rosso tweeted out that they had Buemi in a seat fitting again. I see Buemi a more likely candidate for that seat than Kvyat. Buemi doesn't currently have a seat in Formula E next year. Renault have left, and although he's aligned with the new Nissan team coming in, that's not 100% confirmed. I can see that being more of a possibility than Kvyat. I don't think Buemi's a better driver than Daniel Kvyat, I will say that. But I think for Daniel, that's just the wrong decision. And I think, although for the team, it would be great having an experienced driver and he is quick. I think a lot of people will agree, did beat Daniel Ricciardo in that one full season they were together. But I think for him, wrong decision. For the team, probably the correct decision.
I can't remember the last time we had a proper debate where I completely disagreed with guests on anything, so I'm quite enjoying this. But are we basically saying then that a reserve driver role at Ferrari is better than a race seat at Toro Rosso?
Yes.
Really? Because that's what it's boiling down to. Because we've got people turning around to me last week saying, "Oh, of course Verne will take up a seat in F1. It's F1. It's where everybody wants to be. It's the pinnacle of open wheel racing." And now a week or two on, we're saying, "Oh, well, yeah, he should stay in a development role because it's Toro Rosso." It's a chance for him to go there and completely prove them wrong. And I keep saying redemption, but that's what it would be to him. And if he sees it that way, goes in with the right mindset, and when you consider, if you look at him from when he was dropped from Toro Rosso and compare him to now, he looks like a completely different guy. Go there, prove him wrong, and then turn around at the end of 2019 and go, "Hey, I've just got an offer from Force India or whatever, up yours."
Yeah, difficult. That's a very hard way to look at it.
I totally get it. I totally get what you're saying, because I was saying this last year, wasn't I? How he was treated was disgusting, and I was livid the way he was kicked in the gut. But it's a race seat in Formula One, and it's not just a case of, it's Toro Rosso. It could be, it's Toro Rosso for now, but next year it could be whoever.
Yeah, I'm still not changing my mind. I still think if it was any other team, it'd be fine. But because it's Toro Rosso, I think if you put it's really difficult, like you say. But I think if I was Kvyat, and if a company like Red Bull treated me like they did, considering he hadn't had an awful start to that year when Verstappen took his place, he had got that podium in China. And to see them just kick him out the door like they did, and at the end, I'm thinking when he did that one-off race, or sort of one-off race at the end of last year in the USA, when he got that 1 point, I was looking at him and I was thinking, man, you just got to let it go. I mean, this team obviously don't want you, and I'd hate him to come back and him to be pushed aside again. And I think there could be opportunities with Ferrari, with them expanding into Formula E. I love to bring up Formula E, and them doing things in World Endurance Championship. I think he has opportunities there more so than he would at Toro Rosso, as in if he came back and had an awful time, I think that would hinder his career more. So if I was him, I'd just stay put at Ferrari. But I think you have definitely some good points there, Sean, and it's definitely almost a toss of the coin on what he should do.
I'm going to take your Formula E point there and just go Formula E over F1. No thanks, but that's just my opinion. But yeah, John T, anything to add on Kvyat before I get on to what is going to be Giovinazzi?
No, it's just, I've just been trying to find other names to fill that list of 10. The only one we did miss out was Makino.
Has he got the super light? That's my only. I'm not sure on Makino. I keep meaning to check it up. Is he not?
But he had 13 at the end of 2015. That's 27 points short. He's had 2 years since then, and that has. So it depends on how he's been doing. But we do know that Toro Rosso and Honda in particular would like a Japanese driver in there, so that might be something for the future. Might not be enough by the start of 2019.
Fantastic driving Monza as well, have to say.
Oh, superb.
We're going to move on as there is Buemi on there. I was just mentioning Buemi, but Dan did it for me there. He did have a seat fitting today. I don't know what we can read into that one. I think that's probably just maybe an FP1 appearance so they could assess him, or as I said to you early, John T, it might be a standard reserve driver seat fitting, or he might be on the radar for 2019, but anything could happen this silly season. But one thing that doesn't look likely to happen is Giovinazzi to Toro Rosso. That's something that's been linked this last week, I think it is, to that. Helmut Marko just simply said, I think Giovinazzi is going somewhere else. Read into that what you will, but with the rumours that Ferrari are going to be announcing Leclerc tomorrow, I think that's Giovinazzi to Sauber pretty much done. Not announced, but pretty much done, to be honest, John T.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Giovinazzi's links are more scarlet than red. You know, he's been very much involved in the Ferrari program for quite a while now. And that would be the more logical move. Again, I know Dan will disagree. I don't personally think he's the right fit for that, but if that's what they need, then that's what's going to happen.
Go on, Dan. I can hear you desperate to say something.
You're wrong, John T. You're wrong. He's fantastic. He's the best driver ever. No. He was good in those 2 races he did. He beat Ericsson comfortably, and he just jumped into the car. I know we debated this last week, but he deserves a chance, man. Surely you think just a little chance. Just chuck him in there, see what he can do, even if it's just for half a season. Surely you think that.
Yeah, maybe he does deserve a chance because 2 races wasn't really a lot of a chance. But I just don't think he's got it, if that makes any sense.
That's fair. I think I agree with that. I think he's not the X Factor rated driver, but I think he's good enough, at least just to give it a go.
Yeah, I can get that.
Yeah, maybe to, even though they're a team towards the rear end of the grid, maybe to work as a number 2 driver, to just work the team into more points as a whole.
I don't really know a lot about him, to be honest. All I know is from his F1 time, it wasn't particularly brilliant. But picking up on what you said there, Dan, or was it John T that said he hasn't got it? The thing is, you don't need it anymore for Formula One. You can get on pretty easily to the grid and be bang average and stay there for the rest of your career. Let's just leave it at that one. But we're going to move on to Ferrari for everything that's going to go tomorrow. It just needs to flow quite nicely there before we get on to Esteban Ocon. It looks as though Charles Leclerc's move to Ferrari is on. That's come from Autosport. They want to apparently honour the plan implemented by Sergio Marchionne before he passed away. And also reported in the ever-reliable Automotor und Sport, Leclerc apparently signed a contract to race for the team earlier this year under Marchionne, but new boss Louis Camilleri wants to keep Raikkonen. Now, at Monza, Ferrari said, "We have not taken a decision yet. When we take that decision, and there is no time frame, you will be the second to know." And Raikkonen said, "I do not know. Eventually it will happen. You can probably expect everything. I've learned that over the last few years." It looks really, John T, as though Leclerc is going to Ferrari. I know we're both a little bit mixed on that one, but as much as I like Kimi, and it was brilliant to see his performance in qualifying in Monza and get that record, it is nearly 40 years old. Time to call it a day and let somebody else have a go.
Yeah, because even after that stupendous pole, I got to say again, the fastest lap in Formula One history, he didn't seem all that happy about it. I mean, we know that Kimi has one facial expression and one emotion for every situation, but he just really didn't seem that happy about it. It was a massive achievement for him, and the reaction he got from the crowd was enormous, as you would expect. So it really is just a job at the moment.
I'm going to be honest, Jonty. What sold it to me, this story, was the fact that Vettel's come out this week and said he doesn't want the team to put team orders, but also apparently, according to some news outlets, reported that he's not happy that there were no team orders to help him out at Monza and things like that. And it just sounds to me as though Kimi's basically been told, sorry, mate, we're letting you go. And he's gone, well, stuff you then. If he wants to win the championship, he's got to do it himself. I'm not saying Kimi has said that because they're good friends, but that's how it felt at the weekend. It felt like there'd been a shift from number one and number two drivers to Kimi just doing what Kimi does.
Yeah, possibly. That is a good point. But the other point I did want to raise is the fact that if it's true about the contract being signed under Marchione and then it's being challenged later on, with everything that Marchione did for Ferrari, not just in racing, but in the world as a whole for the brand, and the passion that Ferrari fans have, if they went against what could be called his last wish, that would cause a massive rift, and they can't afford that.
That's a really good point. That's a very, very good point. But, I mean, in terms of on the track, Dan, it would be a little bit... I don't know how to word it, really, but it's been Kimi's best year in Formula One for a while in terms of performance, and he's been solid. He's not been absolutely thrashed by his teammate. Kind of ironic, I guess, is the word I'm looking for. This could be his last year when you consider that maybe in the previous couple of years he's not been at the races, for want of a better term. Kind of odd that this is the year he goes.
Yeah, I suppose. I do agree. It's been his best year probably since 2013, 2012. His best year at Ferrari for sure. But that being said, he's still not at Seb's level. And I don't think he would be at Leclerc's level if Leclerc was in that Ferrari. I really don't believe that. But you guys saying that Raikkonen, maybe he's not playing that second fiddle part like he should be or might be for the rest of the season. Do you think Leclerc would? Do you think that he would happily play second fiddle to Seb for a couple of years and then be given the chance? Or do you think he would just expect to be equal to Seb straight away? I'd love to know what you two think about that.
Well, to be honest, this is definitely something for another stream. I'm not going to get into it now because we'll end up overrunning stupidly, as we always do. But I think there's something going on at Ferrari at the minute. Something's not quite right. And it's been this last couple of weeks that just... Vettel's doing a lot more complaining about the team, not just about results. The team is starting to say their bit. Just something doesn't feel right. And I'm, without putting on the tinfoil hats and getting too much into it, I've got a feeling that there's going to be more of a change in the near future than just Leclerc replacing Raikkonen.
Yeah, that's fair. And like we spoke about last week, the whole PR, Charles Leclerc doing that, not secret test, but you know what I mean. All the, what do you call it? Well, whatever, you know what I'm on about.
Yeah.
Being in that Ferrari, doing that test, cameras on him, all smells a bit fishy. Smells like there is going to be some sort of announcement very, very soon. So, yeah, I think tomorrow there will be an announcement, and I'm all for it.
What about you, Jonty? Do you think what Dan was saying there would happily go in and play that number two role for now?
I think Seb and a lot of the team would try to make him play that role, but I don't think he would do it. But that said, he's a very smart guy. What's to say that he wouldn't go in there and happily play the number two role for a couple of years, just learning all the time, raising his stock by always being the next step down on the podium. And then when it suits him, 1 year, just decide, no, I'm going to go and win it all.
That would make some headlines, definitely, wouldn't it? But we're not going to say too much more on Ferrari because obviously the news looks like it's going to come at some point this week, according to reports. Of course, just take that all with a pinch of salt. It could be months away yet. You just don't know. But are you expecting tomorrow, Jonty, that it's going to be Leclerc and Vettel, or do you think we're going to get a surprise and maybe Raikkonen does stay?
I fully expect it to be Leclerc and Vettel. I really do. Or Vettel and Leclerc, as Ferrari would probably word it.
What about you, Dan?
Yep, like Jonty says, as Ferrari would word it, Vettel and Leclerc.
Awesome. We agreed on something. Let's going to jump on to Esteban Ocon now quickly. There is something else I want to talk about very briefly afterwards. But Toto Wolff's come out today, or was it yesterday? It might have been yesterday, saying that obviously they're trying to get him a seat, but it's difficult. And I'm a little bit concerned by one of the lines of his quote. He said, "My long-term perspective on him is still very optimistic." Jonty, that says to me, maybe I read too much into it, that they're struggling to find him a seat if they're now talking, well, long term he'll be fine, but at the moment we haven't really got anything for him.
It's worrying for him. He definitely deserves a seat, and when they say long term, that means going somewhere else. And F1 being as it is, as we've already said, never coming back.
See, that line, I can't remember the quote with Wehrlein. I meant to look it up earlier, but that line reminds me of something similar that was said when Wehrlein was looking for a seat and couldn't get one, and they were saying, it's not over, we just can't get him somewhere for now. I think he's in trouble because McLaren, by the way, was never an option. Zak Brown saying that they were looking at him, they were interested in him, but because he had the Mercedes ties, they weren't going to go there, so they prefer to take their own driver rather than a driver tied to another manufacturer. So that kind of makes sense in that respect. But I can't see, maybe Williams. I can't see Perez without a seat. Maybe, sorry Dan, maybe if Haas decide to ditch Grosjean, he'll end up there, Perez, and then Ocon will stay at Force India. But I've been worried about him for a little while now, but I feel really uneasy this week, and I think we could be Oconless next season on the grid.
Maybe. It's so hard to tell. I think he's the front runner for that Williams seat, in my opinion. So that's given me a glimmer of hope. I really think if worse comes to worse, I think he will get that Williams seat. And I think he'll be alongside Sorokin. I hate to say it, this is the third time I've mentioned it tonight, but Mercedes do have a Formula E team starting next season. So there will be 2 seats there. I know I hate to say Formula E. I know the chat's going to hate me, but that is an option for at least a season. It is a big step back. I will admit that. But it's an option for 1 season. But I hold out and I pray that he's in at Williams. But I do think if it's not Williams, then I think it will be nowhere.
What about this this stuff that's been about this week? Some pictures of him and Ocon, and I've got a few actually on from the Force India website where they just seem to get on so well. Do you think, I don't know who I just said, did I say Stroll and Ocon? I could have said somebody else. But do you think maybe Lance Stroll would prefer Ocon as his teammate over Perez, and maybe then Perez would go to Haas, Dan? Because I just, Stroll and Ocon genuinely look like they're proper good friends.
Yeah, that would work, and it would keep the Mercedes ties with Force India, so that would keep that relationship very happy. For me, that made more sense. And if Perez hadn't have put the team into administration, I think 100% they would be going Ocon and Stroll. I think it's just because of the fact Perez made that really courageous move that they're thinking that they need to keep him for the publicity. But like I said, I think for the team, it would be great to have Ocon and Stroll. And like you say, Sean, I think Stroll himself would prefer Ocon, but I think the team are going for a huge transition. A lot of change is about to happen. And for a lot of the people, keeping that consistency with Perez, who has saved a lot of people, a lot of jobs, I imagine for a lot of the people within that team, they would prefer to see Perez. But I don't know. I think Perez will stay. I think that's almost a given now, but it's an interesting one to think about.
What about you, John? Are you as concerned for Ocon as I am, or do you think this is all going to get sorted and you might, even if it just is, a seat at Williams?
He would definitely be the front runner, as Dan said, for a seat at Williams, because he's the most capable of the free agents right now, if there are any. I've just been sat here thinking while you've been talking about the Stroll and Ocon friendship, and wondering if that would be bad for them. Because I know they're not fighting for titles at the moment, but let's not remember, Lewis and Nico were really good friends when in their karting days and at the start of their careers. Look what happened to that. Do you think either of them would think about that when making these decisions?
It's a good point. No, it's a fair point. I mean, yeah. I mean, like you said, they're not going to be fighting for titles, so I guess the pressure's not there as much. Or is it in a way? I mean, if Force India deliver them a car or whatever they're called next year that competes for fourth, that is the B championship effectively, isn't it? So they could be fighting to top that side of things. So that's a good point. I might have to think about that one, but I don't know. The only thing I'm clinging on to, John T, tinfoil hat on, is if Perez, as he's claimed, signed a deal with somebody recently, why is he waiting to announce that? What reason, if we know Stroll is going to Force India and Perez is signed to somewhere and it's reported to be Force India, why is he waiting? This is what I'm thinking. Has he signed somewhere else and they're waiting to decide on which driver they're going to partner him with before he gets to make his announcement?
It's possible. And thinking along those lines, we know that a good portion of the sponsorship money that came into Force India was through Sergio Perez Mexican links and the Mexican sponsors. So perhaps that some kind of deal is being worked out there with Williams, and he can't make an announcement until the sponsorship element is finalised.
Yeah, I just, I'm like when I get my tinfoil hat on. I just wondered if something, maybe again, Dan, sorry, maybe they're waiting for Haas to say we're going to get rid of Grosjean, and then Perez goes, oh, I'm going to Haas, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so wide open this silly season. It's actually a bit mad, and it's a bit too much to fathom sometimes. But yeah, an option for sure.
Right, last point before we get on to some Q&A, because I'm trying to fly through this because we're doing well. We're doing well. We're well on time at the moment. Helmut Marko has made some interesting comments, throwing this one straight out. He didn't tell either of you about this one because I'm just that nice. He said, we are pleased with the great cooperation with Honda for the coming years, and if this cooperation for whatever reason does not work as expected, then Red Bull will leave Formula One. The cooperation with Honda has been running very well with Toro Rosso so far. After the McLaren disaster, Honda was close to a departure from Formula One at the end of 2017, and we really had to convince the Japanese in intensive conversations that they could resume with us to start. Is this another empty threat, Jonty? Or do you think he's serious this time? Because this is getting not repetitive because they've been quiet about it for a little while, but it's getting a bit boring now with these teams saying, oh, if we don't get this, we're going to go, or we're not. Either you stay or you go. Commit to the sport or go do something else.
No, I'm wondering if his ringtone is the Peer Gynt suite, so it's just got The Boy Who Cried Wolf on repeat all the time. How many times are we going to hear, oh, if it's not good, we're going to leave?
I don't know, maybe I'm, again, reading too much into it. That says to me they're concerned about next season. But all the stuff they've been talking already is that Honda are brilliant. Or it could even be that he's just saying that, knowing that next year Honda are going to be absolutely brilliant and surprise us all. Because let's be honest, Jonty, he does like to stir the pot just a little bit, does Mr. Marko?
That's exactly what this is. He's just stirring up media attention. There's nothing in it. I really don't think there is. He's, maybe not him, but further up the ladder in Red Bull, the company, they're fully aware of how much money it brings in worldwide from having the Formula One links. So I don't see it happening.
Obviously, Dan, we can't afford to lose any teams. We're struggling to get places for good drivers as it is with the 10 we've got, but there's just no need for these empty threats, is there? It's a little bit playground. That's how it feels sometimes. We're not getting our way, we're off.
That's how it feels sometimes. With Marko, that's how it is all the time. 100%. He loves it, and F1 would not be the same without Helmut Marko. I mean, yes, it's probably another empty threat, but you never know. There's probably a little bit of truth in there, probably a little sprinkle here and there of the truth. But, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised this time, if I'm being totally honest, because it's obviously apparent that they're not happy with Renault. They're not happy with this whole situation that they're not at the front. They think they've got the best chassis, which it's a pretty good chassis. I think we can all agree with that. And if they did have a better engine, they would be fighting up there. I think if 2 or 3 years down the line, if they're still not there, if with the Honda engine they end up going considerably backwards like McLaren did, who knows? They might leave, they might get up and leave. But I also think it's the sort of team where if they did try and sell, a lot of big companies, obviously Aston Martin, big title sponsors this year, they would be very keen to pick up that team. I think Honda, they would jump in and try and buy the team out, even if it's Red Bull or Toro Rosso. So if they do leave, I don't think it's the end of the world, because I do think people will buy them out. But I think you're about right. It's just Marco being Marco, and there's no real truth to it.
I mean, what you say there about being up there fighting for championships because the chassis is good if they had a better power unit. That's why they can't get a better power unit, isn't it? And they're obviously thinking, trying to put that doubt out there, maybe pressure Honda a little bit to say, look, you need to get this right. Because at the end of the day, Jonty, the 2021 rules don't look like they're going to be the big reset we're all expecting on the engines now. So we're perhaps not going to get any new manufacturers till 2023. If Honda doesn't work, they'd look a little bit stupid to turn around and go back to Renault, and they're never going to get a Mercedes or a Ferrari engine.
Yeah, that's true. Again, while you two have been sitting here thinking, and you make good points. And let's be honest, the only thing that, if this was to come true, the only thing that would leave is the Red Bull name. The teams are far too big to just disappear. Someone would buy them. Someone would get in there.
Yeah, I don't think they'd disappear forever. I think, like Dan was saying there, somebody would pick them up. Maybe Honda would take them or something.
Well, apparently, if you are to believe everything we've heard this year, there's two consortiums who are desperate to get a team.
Yeah, the Mazepins are one.
Yeah, and the rich energy.
was that a little laugh at the end there, Jonty? Oh, rich energy. Let's not get back onto them. Yeah, let's not even go there. But we're gonna end it there, unless you guys have got anything else to say on anything we've discussed tonight.
I will quickly say, someone did mention earlier in the 10 drivers for Toro Rosso, the MotoGP champion, Marquez.
Yes.
Could that be an option?
I read that today. They've said that he could make it to Formula 1, haven't they? Or could make the switch.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, they were all surprised by how quickly he got to grips with the car.
I think the way silly season's been, anything can happen. To be quite frank, it's been crazy this year. But anything you want to add, Jonty?
I was to say, wouldn't that just be the perfect cherry onto this craziest silly season? Because it is the most nuts I've ever seen. Imagine, to finish it off, the two Toro Rosso seats become Jenson Button coming back from going off to Japan's race and a MotoGP rider. That would be ridiculous.
I just F1 at its finest. But we're going to move on to taking some of your questions now for the next 10 or so minutes, as we always do at the end of streams. Really enjoyed this one. Great to actually be differing in opinion as well. So Jerome says Vandoorne to Haas. Is that a possibility? I think if he stays, it's probably Toro Rosso, isn't it, Jonty? I can't see Haas picking him up. And I think Sauber have distanced themselves from him as well.
Yeah, I can't see that happening.
Maybe replace Grosjean, Dan?
No, never. No. Nah, I mean, I agree with you both. I don't really see him anywhere except Toro Rosso, if I'm being honest.
Unless Sauber do decide to drop Ericsson, which again would be ironic because he's not been bad this year at all. But Vandoorne and Giovinazzi, maybe. Who knows? Like anything can happen. Daniel G says no replacements for Gasly yet. No, not at the moment, mate. It just a pool of apparently 10 drivers, according to Helmut Marko. So it could even be me. I don't know. I wouldn't even know. It's unlikely I struggle to drive a road car. Kvyat to Sauber, says Jack Waters. I mean, we did mention that, I think, briefly, didn't we? That could be an option to one of the Ferrari-powered teams. Maybe Haas. Sorry to keep dumping on Grosjean, Dan, but maybe to Haas, Kvyat, with those Ferrari ties. Can I say that, please? No, I'm not going to say that. We've said Kvyat to Sauber. Who will go to Sauber if Leclerc goes to Ferrari? It's looking likely to be Giovinazzi, something which Helmut Marko didn't confirm, but did kind of come out and hint that he was going elsewhere. So going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Definitely. Will I buy Kimi's book, says Ellie? Probably not. I don't have time to read a book, if I'm being totally honest. I think we've got Discord playing up once again. Try and see if we can get that fixed. If not, then it'll just be me answering some questions for a little while. When will Audi join F1? We need them. Yeah, we could do with some more teams, but I think, as I've said, earlier in the stream, the rules reset for 2021 isn't going to be as big as we were expecting, so it's unlikely we're going to see new teams. But I think Audi, Jonty, is a team we'd like to see, and in Porsche as well, maybe Aston Martin.
Yeah, all three names have been coming up a lot recently, especially when they've been involved in the meetings about the future of the engine. So of those, I think Porsche would be the biggest. They're closest to it.
Does Jack Aitken have a super license? Asked Jerome. I honestly, do either of you know? I assume he can't be far off because he's been linked with Formula One quite a bit lately.
I don't think he does. Well, pretty sure he doesn't have yet. But I think you're right. I don't think he's that far off.
Ben McCarthy, if F1 Word had a license to broadcast F1 GP weekends, who would you hire as pundits, as commentators? Well, obviously, Jonty and I would have to be the commentators, but I'd probably pay Dan to go and be in the pit lane and pretend to be Ted Kravitz. If you're up for that, Dan.
Karun Chandhok. I mean, he's probably done a better job than me, to be fair. I've got to give it to him.
I've really warmed to Chandhok. I've made a point of watching the Channel 4 coverage a little bit more because people are saying it's a lot better. And I really like Chandhok. And I like him on Twitter as well. He's straight to the point. No BS, and I like that. I think Brundle would have to be in there, definitely, and probably I'd go with Ben Edwards over Crofty.
Oh, I'd take Ben Edwards over Crofty any day. I was just going to say, Dan and Ellie down in the pit getting all the driver interviews, and Stuart up in our version of the Skypad.
The Skypad drinking his energy drink. That would definitely be worth it.
Instead of the Skypad, it'd have to be the bear pit, wouldn't it?
The bear pit. Don't give him ideas. You know there's going to be memes with this. Couple of super chats that came in earlier that I missed, so apologies there. Thank you very much to Vlogging at Charlie for your contribution once again. Stoffel will have to start a waffle store. There you go. Why not? I mean, you know. And Oliver Thomason, I think that says, thank you very much for your contribution as well. Really do appreciate that. Says, loving the channel at the moment. Would love some thoughts on Leclerc to Haas and Grosjean to Sauber in a straight swap if Leclerc doesn't go to Ferrari. You might have to wait a second for a thought on that because I'd never even considered that.
Interesting. Especially when you think that they've both got Ferrari power units. They've both got other technical partnerships with them. So Ferrari do carry weight. They can they could in theory say, make this happen or no more bits.
Yeah, I mean, it's unlikely to happen, I think, based on what we hear. But then, like I say, silly season, it's been mad this year. But, Grosjean, a little bit of experience, the way Sauber are progressing, that could help them with development on that car because they are moving up quite nicely, actually, Sauber at the minute. So I'm not going to say it's not possible because it absolutely is because they're both with Ferrari power teams, so the links are there. But I think, I don't know, Dan, you're a Grosjean fan. What do you reckon to that?
As a Grosjean fan, I think he is a Haas or nothing. Today, what's it called? Beyond the Grid came out on the official F1 channel. I was just having a quick listen before we started talking tonight. And he said at the end of 2009, going into 2010, when he was told he didn't have a drive, he wanted to go off cooking. And that really that was Grosjean to a T for me. And I think that's a perfect sort of portrait of what's going on now. I think if he's out of Haas and if he can't get a move further up the grid, which he won't, if he's out of Haas, I think he will just bun off anyone else. He won't want to go to Sauber. This is what I think anyway. And I think for Sauber as well, I think there's better options for them. So Grosjean, I think he'll end his career at Haas, and I can see Leclerc going there. I will say that. But yeah, I don't see there being a straight swap.
There you go. Sorry, John.
You heard it here first from Dan. Grosjean will be on Celebrity MasterChef.
I thought you were going to say you heard it here first from from Dan that he's definitely going to end his career at Haas. So that could be this year, of course, or it could be 10 years in the future. But really good question here because you kind of forget about Alonso's decision to retire with everything that's going on. But Avi Yeet Roy says, what if McLaren starts being competitive and Fernando comes back in 2020? Who do McLaren drop? The reason I bring it up is because we haven't really talked a lot about Alonso lately because that kind of news has disappeared along with the Ricciardo stuff because there's so much else happening. But if Fernando is going to come back as, he's left the door open and McLaren said they'd like to get him back if they were competitive, who goes?
Whoever's on worse form.
If the driver lineup is still the same, I would probably say Sainz. He's the one that's been brought in. Norris has been the one that's brought up.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a really good question. Got me thinking now. That's a really good question. I mean, I don't think that Alonso's going to come back. I think that was just a little bit like Hakkinen, really. Oh, yeah, I'm just going to take a bit of time off, but I might be back. And I think, given that in an interview somewhere else he was using the word retirement quite a lot, I don't see him going back, but never say never. And yeah, a bit brutal on Sainz, though, wouldn't it? You know, come in, help us out. Oh, by the way, you've been fantastic. Well, look at Vandoorne. You've been really good. We're really happy with you, but see you later. So, yeah, probably Sainz. I tend to agree that if they're going to bring Norris through, they're going to stick with him, aren't they?
Yeah, although does anyone else get the feeling that Sainz is sort of becoming the supply teacher of Formula One?
The supply teacher. That's a great way of putting it.
Well, he is. He was in, the Toro Rosso. Then it's like, oh, well, you go to Renault, but you're not a Renault driver. And now go to McLaren. We don't know if he's still got any ties with Toro Rosso. There might still be something there. I haven't read anything about it.
I mean, it doesn't sound great on him, does it? But no, he does seem to get moved around just to fill spaces, doesn't he? So I like Sainz. I think he's got a lot of potential to do very well, but I don't think. Oh, how can I word this without upsetting Sainz fans? I'm gonna just have to say it. I think he's going to end up as another guy that is kind of always the bridesmaid, never the bride, kind of always going to be in that midfield. I think if he were going to be fighting up the top, he would have been promoted to Red Bull over Gasly. I don't think McLaren are going to be competing anytime soon, so that's going to, as good as he will be in that McLaren potentially, or could be, that's going to lower his stock because he's driving around towards the back end or in that midfield somewhere. And yeah, I think probably maybe a Perez. He might be able to be a Perez and get that kind of rating, if you like, as a top-end midfield driver, but he could also end up just... Yeah, I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you're worried about him becoming the next Kovalainen instead of managing to dodge the bullet like Magnussen has.
I wouldn't say it'd be that bad, but I like Kovalainen, don't get me started on that one. Another contribution's coming. Thank you very much to Daniel G. Says, love the channel and all the effort. Thank you for that, mate. Says, on the Perez subject, I think Stroll would want him to stay in Force India and bring in Stroll Jr. Yeah, I think we've said before, haven't we, with that decision to help the team into administration, it would make sense, Dan, for them to keep Perez on as a kind of, not as a thank you, well, yeah, I guess as a thank you, but also his experience within that team. He's been there a long time, and it wouldn't rock the boat quite as much, would it, as maybe getting rid of Perez?
Yeah, I think you're right there. And I think that's a good benchmark for Stroll as well. I think we know what Perez is capable of. And this is a real chance for Stroll to go up against someone with F1 pedigree. So I think that'd be a really interesting dynamic as well. But yeah, it makes sense to keep Perez, just to keep everything nice and calm and happy in a team going through a lot of change.
Yeah. I can't think of anything else to say on Perez, really. I've just, yeah. Somebody just mentioned Hulkenberg and Perez there. They were really good together as teammates of that team. But yeah, I think, Hulkenberg just is another one, isn't he, that's ended up in that midfield, all that potential, all that possibility. Actually, yeah, when you think about it, Hulkenberg looked like he was going to Ferrari. That didn't happen. It looked like Sainz might be in a Red Bull. That hasn't happened. Perez was apparently looking set to go to Ferrari. That didn't happen. So yeah, he could end up in that little, which isn't, to be fair, Jonty, isn't a bad group to be part of, the Hulkenbergs and the Perezes.
No, it's very respectable. The problem is it's never going to be challenging for titles, which is what all of the drivers think about all the time.
I'm going to take one more question before we disappear. Scotty McNichols, brilliant. Ford as a team asks, F is Jens? Probably said that completely wrong. Red Bull returning to Ferrari engines, would that be realistic? I don't think Ford will ever come as a team. I can't see they've got the budget for that. I might be wrong. They've got a bit of money, but I don't think F1 kind of money. Maybe bring Cosworth back. We've said that before. That would be nice to see. As for Red Bull returning to Ferrari engines, if that ever happened, they'd be year old, because I can't ever see Ferrari giving them an up-to-date engine, because they know that they'd probably be beating them with it.
Yeah. I'd love them to come back, certainly under the Cosworth name. I mean, just the sheer mention of Cosworth makes you think of the DFV engine, which is just a masterpiece of engineering. But it'd be very difficult. I mean, they've definitely got the budget, but have they got the know-how yet? They haven't been pushing into the hybrid end as much as other companies. I mean, I know there's not the real road relevance, but they still have to have that research, that R&D. So I don't think it's a direction that Ford really been looking at.
Have they got F1 money, Ford, or could they be another one that it'll all come down to whether or not there's a cost cap?
Oh no, they've definitely got money. I mean, there are some negative issues that you read about in the media, but you can't ignore the fact they've got the biggest selling car in the world for 2 years in a row, the F-150.
That's a good point. Actually, on cost, can I just say they're talking now about staggering the cost cap, aren't they? Doing it over a few years. So it's been raised to 200 million, or proposed to be, for 2019. Then they're going to come down to 175 million for 2020, and then 150 million for 2021. But I had a look at some stuff on racefans.net. Come to you first, John. So your cost cap for me isn't going to work, because the majority of teams on the grid, basically outside of your Ferraris, your Mercedes, your Red Bulls, and your McLarens, aren't spending 150 million anyway. So they're still going to get absolutely trashed by the teams that can afford to spend that kind of money. And not to mention the fact that with Red Bull, they can move stuff around with Toro Rosso to kind of, I don't know, rig it that way if you like. And the same with Ferrari with Sauber. So for me, it won't work. I understand what they're trying to do, but it's just not. That's not a cost cap for me.
No, it isn't. And like you say, with the sort of the four biggest names already spending more than that and all the others spending way less than that, it doesn't really make much of a difference. I was reading a really good conversation between Ryan Eric King and Hazel Southwell about this, where Ryan mentioned that, I can't remember if it was the NBA or NBL, possibly even the NFL, but they worked with cost caps for buying players, training, and all the rest of it. But what they did, they worked it with a fine. So teams could spend over it, but they would get taxed on how much they spend over it by quite a bit. And that money which was taxed was then divided up and given to the lesser teams. That would be very interesting to see.
Definitely. I mean, they need to do something with money, don't they, Dan? But I'm just not convinced that this cost cap's going to be the answer. I mean, you can't turn around and say you can spend £10.50 or anything stupid like that. But, you know, if teams aren't spending £150 million, you're not really changing too much in that midfield and back end of the grid, are you?
Well, if it was £10.50, I think we'd have a very different Formula One. that's
cycle racing.
Yeah. Second-hand cycle racing, I think. But I will say, the point of a cost cap, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, but the point of a cost cap isn't that every team spends the limit. We're always going to have teams that don't spend as much. But I still think 200 million is a little bit much. Brought down a little bit would be nice, but I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see, aren't we? I am for a cost cap. I think that is the right way to go. And I think what you said there, Jonty, that would be lovely to see that sort of model put into Formula One. That would be great, especially for teams like Manor when they were struggling so much. Something like that. It just helped those new teams, especially if we had the likes of Ford, like someone mentioned a minute ago, Porsche, those guys coming in, might help them find their feet a little bit. But I really like that idea, Jonty.
Yeah, like you say, with new teams, I think we mentioned it last week, the biggest sort of barrier to new teams coming in is the fact they've got to wait 3 years until they can get any kind of money back out. So having the cost cap for them, even if it's reduced down to 100 million, it's not, it's 300 million, because they've got to go for those 3 years before they can get anything out. That's never going to work.
Yeah, I'm for a cost cap, but I don't think it will work in Formula One, not at the level they're looking at. But we will leave it there, guys, because of course we are overrunning, because that's the way we do things. But thank you very much, Dan, for once again joining us on a Wednesday. I think we might have to make you our Wednesday regular if you're up for that one.
I'd have no complaints about that. That would be fantastic. And as always, I've absolutely loved talking to you both and looking at all your comments in the chat as well.
No worries, mate. I'll inevitably talk to you in a minute. And as ever, Jonty, thank you very much, mate. It's been a pleasure as always. Really enjoyed this one.
Yeah, isn't it great when we just blather on about stuff without any kind of notes? I like this. This is great because we have to actually think, or at least I do.
Oh, the thinking wasn't part of it. Damn. Right, that might have to change. But anyway, yeah, thank you very much, guys, and I'll talk to you in a bit.
Bye, folks.
See ya.
Lovely. Thank you very much to Dan and to Jonty, of course, and to everybody for watching as well. Thanks for coming out for this one. Thank you very much as well for all your support over the last week. I know I've been struggling with my throat. It's a proper infection, so I'm just about getting over it now. But yeah, thank you very much for all your words and understanding on some of the changes as well. If you are interested in the changes to the channel, well, they're not really changes. We're going back to what we were doing before. Check that out on Discord. It's still there, and on Twitter and Facebook as well. But also just a little heads up for the rest of this week, because I'm still recovering from this sore throat. Basically, content isn't going to be scheduled as such. I'm just going to upload as and when I can. So going to be doing bare bones this week a little bit, and we'll have a stream on Sunday. There'll be another video before the end of the week as well. Then next week, race week, back on it again, I promise. So yes, we'll get on that one. But don't forget, in the meantime, you can follow me on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.